Councilmember Nancy Day-Achauer is dedicated to revitalizing the community through service and advocacy, with a special emphasis on assisting vulnerable members of our community. Today on City Chat, Councilmember Day-Achauer is joining us today to talk about her initiatives as the newly elected representative on City Council. Councilmember, thank you very much for joining us on City Chat today.
It's my pleasure.
Could you please tell us a little bit about yourself and your professional background?
Happy to. I live on the west side, in District 2, which is the northwest part that surrounds Hilliard.
Okay.
But I have spent the last decade doing service on the greater west side, Westland, Prairie Township, Hilltop area. I have served as a United Methodist pastor.
Wow.
Since 2008, and my specialty is community-based ministry. So I've spent this last decade on the west side addressing human service needs, particularly in the areas of food insecurity, substance misuse, and also senior services.
That's amazing. If it's not too personal to ask, can we talk about like where that passion where it has stemmed from, because it's obviously something that you live every day?
Well, I'm from a tradition where when you are appointed to a church, you are embedded in that community and you listen to the community and hear from them what their needs are.
Yeah.
And that is why I prioritized those particular issues, because they had a huge impact on the greater west side. And so I partnered with other stakeholders in the community to actually address those needs. So not just advocate and talk about these issues, but actually create programming that can help address them.
Could you kind of talk about what experience you hope to bring to City Council and what are some of your long-term goals? So the experience that you have and how you plan on applying it.
Yes, so my local experience is just being a member of the community, advocating for them, creating programming for them. But before I was in ministry, I was in business. I have a Bachelor of Science in Business Management, and I worked in a corporate setting at a hospital. At that time, the hospital was called Catholic Healthcare West. Now it's Dignity Health. And at that time, they were the 5th largest not-for-profit hospital system in the United States. And I worked in the corporate legal department. So I bring that professional experience also to the table. And just that whole administrative, because being on city council is a lot of administration. It's not all glamorous stuff.
Right.
And so I bring that as well, of being able to do the administrative part.
That's wonderful. What are some city projects that you are excited about?
Well, the two that I am really excited about are Link Us, creating that wonderful improvement in our transit system, and also expanding recreation and parks throughout the city so that those parts of the city that currently do not have programming will eventually have programming, so that families as well as individuals can take advantage of the great rec and programming that we have.
What do you think are the best ways that we can prepare for Columbus's rapid growth in the coming years?
Link Us is going to be a huge part in that. I worked in the San Francisco Bay Area where I took bus rapid transit to work. I didn't hop in a car and drive. That wasn't practical there.
Right.
And by creating this Link Us system where we have these corridors where we create more walkable communities, we will be able to create an environment where people are less dependent on having to drive your individual car to get to work, to get to the store, to recreate, to do all of those things. It is a big project, and right now it focuses just on those corridors, but improving our transit around those corridors and creating a grid system where people can use feeder buses and whatnot and have more multimodal transportation will enable us to get people moving in a way that's better for the environment, better for your own personal family income when you're not having to spend so much money driving that car and all those expenses that go with it. So this will be really huge at helping Columbus address the changes that are going to happen as we grow.
Right.
Because if we don't do these things, then we're going to become the next LA and have gridlock everywhere. We don't want that. Gridlock is you sit in your car forever and you barely get to move, put, because there's so many vehicles on the road. When I first moved to Columbus and people would say, oh, the traffic, and I'm thinking, the traffic here moves. Try commuting in San Francisco or all these other major cities where you don't have to travel far, but it can take you an hour or more to go that short distance because there are so many vehicles on the road.
Yeah. This is kind of a broad question. So in your opinion, what do you think a community needs to really thrive? Like, you know, families at home. You talked a little bit about transportation. What are some of the main basics of what needs to be happening in a good city?
The number one thing that you need for families and individuals to thrive is housing that is affordable at their income level.
Okay.
And so that's really critical piece here, affordable at their income level. No matter what your income is, you need housing that is affordable for that. Our baristas need housing that's affordable at a barista salary rate. Our teachers need housing that's affordable for a teacher's income. As well as our doctors and our lawyers, all the people who are, work in our schools, our police officers, our firefighters. Every person needs housing that is affordable for them. So we're not talking low-income housing. We're talking just housing that is affordable because you need that stability in order to care for your family and thrive. In my years in the San Francisco Bay Area, starting back in the 80s, they lost control of housing decades ago. And the housing costs were outrageously expensive. It was the norm for people even in reaching middle age to have to rent out rooms in their house, to have roommates in order to have a simple little house.
Yeah.
Even in the suburbs. You had to commute long distances because you had to keep moving every time prices went up. I did not have true housing stability until my daughter was in high school.
Okay.
Starting when she was in preschool, we were living in share rentals with people we did not even know. Wow. Because that's how you had to live when housing prices get out of control, when rents are out of control. And every couple of years, we had to move, and it kept pushing us farther and farther away. And so that meant we had to travel greater distances to get my daughter to daycare, just to go to the store, any of those things. It involved greater distances. And the quality of your life is really poor when you are, one, constantly moving, and two, when you're spending so much time commuting to work.
Yeah.
And so much of your income is going just to keep a roof over your head.
Yeah.
And so that's why I really am passionate about addressing housing issues here in Central Ohio, so not just Columbus, this is a regional issue, because we don't want our region to become like a San Francisco where people have to live like that. The city of Columbus and the region are working on a variety of ways to address housing. There isn't a silver bullet, there isn't just one thing that can be done. And it is going to be challenging because when you become truly a big city, housing becomes different. It's not just suburban single-family home life. You end up with greater density. You end up with apartments that suit people of all income levels. So wealthy people in big cities live in apartments. Go to Chicago, go to New York, go to Atlanta. People of all income levels live in apartments. And so we need to get rid of the apartment stigma that exists in Central Ohio.
Yeah.
It's a huge problem to our progress that so many people think apartment equals low income, equals crime, equals neighborhood deteriorating. And that's not true.
That's so refreshing to hear because, I was going to follow up with that question, if let's say Columbus is able to have affordable housing, what does the current status of who we are as Columbus, how will that change our culture? And what do we need to do in order to change that culture?
Right, because the area of Columbus I live in, we out there jokingly refer to as the Columbus suburbs. Okay, technically we're not a suburb because we're in the city of Columbus, but it looks and feels like a suburb because there's single family homes. But now next to our subdivision are multiple apartment complexes that have high density. Yeah. And it did not bring down the value of my home. My property taxes actually went up 50%, so not an issue. It did not, we had zero increase in crime. Crime levels are very low where I live, just as they were before there were all those apartments. The traffic turned out to not be the concern that many people had, because there was a time when everybody worked 9 to 5, so you had that big influx of cars going in and out of a neighborhood at a very specific time. But now people work all different hours, all different days. Some people work at home. So there wasn't that impact on the traffic that we had anticipated.
Right.
So yes, you can live in a single family home and have apartment buildings coming up right next to and across the street from your subdivision and still have a good quality of life.
Yeah, I'm so glad I had you explain that, because that makes so much sense. You know, there's this this idea that like your house is like your biggest investment. So what would you say, like, as the counter to that is not really true?
Well, no, your house is your biggest investment, and it is how you create generational wealth. Okay. Also true if you own a condo, or like in big cities, you own your apartment. Right. That is how you create generational wealth. But you shouldn't become fearful that if housing is built next to you that is different than yours, that means your quality of life is diminished, and it doesn't mean that the value of your home will diminish.
Yeah, that's such a great point. Thank you. I feel like you have so many like stories to share, and I don't really know how to like ask like for a specific story, but I just is there something in your life that has really changed the way that you feel about some of these city-related issues?
I recently at a meeting when we were discussing housing and apartments and the challenge of people finding places to live, shared a story about when the year my daughter was graduating from high school, and a couple months before graduation, the property owner informed us that they were selling the house and we had to move. And originally they gave me 30 days. Wow. And I explained, hey, my daughter graduates in 2 months. Can I at least get a 2 months extension so that she can graduate from her high school? Yeah. And they were gracious enough to give me that. At this particular time, I was earning $100,000 a year, and it was very difficult for me to find a place to live. Because you would think $100,000, but I was a single parent. And there are a lot of property owners that discriminate against single parents. Why should I rent to somebody who's one income when I can rent to somebody who's two income? That gives better security. So for 3 months, I was essentially, my daughter and I were couch surfing at friends' homes. Wow. Trying to find a place to rent. Jeez. We never could find a place that would rent to us. We ultimately ended up buying a very modest condo that was an hour away from where I worked. And in order to do that, I took money out of my retirement account so that I could buy this little modest condo so we could have a place to live. Columbus and this region could become a community like that, where $100,000 isn't enough to get you a place to rent. Yeah. And so that's why we really have to seriously address this, even though it means Columbus is not the city that it used to be. It's not the little suburban cow town. Yeah. It's a big city now, and that means life changes.
We are so lucky to have you on board, as these changes are on the very brink. So thank you so much for the chat and for coming in today.
Thanks for the opportunity.
I'm Josie Smith. Thanks for watching City Chat on CTV.